Hello and welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
This is the podcast where every week we review a classic pro wrestling event from a streaming service.
And that classic pro wrestling event could be a major television special. It could be a territory major arena show. It could be a direct-to-home video release. Or in the case of this week's show, it could be a major pay-per-view event from WWE.
We fire up the randomizer every week, and on Thursdays, we post to our social media what show we're going to review that week. So social media is the best way to interact with the show, to get in touch with us at WrestleAtRandom on Twitter, also on Instagram. That's the best way to interact with the show. We love to hear from everybody, so send us messages there. And Facebook.com/WrestlingAtRandom. Again, all those links for our social media and subscribing to the podcast can be found at our website, WrestlingAtRandom.com. You mentioned that this show is, of course, a WWE pay-per-view. This is King of the Ring from 2002.
This is just after they got the F out, as we are reminded over and over again on this show with a very wacky video. Wrestlers wearing t-shirts that say "Get the F out." This is just as they were transitioning from WWF when they lost the lawsuit with the World Wildlife Fund and became the WWE.
So the King of the Ring tournament was originally conceived as an idea to draw fans in the Boston market to an outdoor stadium show at Foxborough Stadium. 1985 was the first tournament, and it was won by Don Morocco. After the 86 tournament did not draw well, it was moved indoors to the Providence Civic Center. Bret Hart would win the final local version of the King of the Ring tournament in 1991. In 1993, the WWF would expand from 4 pay-per-views a year to 5, adding the King of the Ring as the new show. 2002, this show we're reviewing here, would be the last. King of the Ring would be revived a few more times over the years as a tournament on the WWE television shows. We get an opening video package showing us previous King of the Ring tournament winners, starting with Bret Hart in 93, Owen in 94. We skip King Mabel in 95. He's missing.
I do not approve of that, particularly if you go back and listen to our very first episode of this podcast, where we extol the virtues of a newly crowned King Mabel as he makes his way down to the ring on his throne.
Dancing on his throne. Go back and listen to episode 1 in your house from 1995 to hear all about King Mabel in a terrible match with Yokozuna. In 1996, they show us Steve Austin winning the birth of Austin 316.
Basically, it seems like, Jeremy, this video package was mostly to show you that, particularly through the edited lens that they gave here, that if you won the King of the Ring, it was going to be your springboard to superstardom, which also will play into the guys that are in the King of the Ring and one wrestler in particular.
It absolutely did, and Triple H was shown in winning in 1997. We skipped through the non-future champions, non-superstars. We skipped the Ken Shamrocks and the Billy Gunns to get to Kurt Angle in 2000 is shown, and Edge.
You mean the one Billy Gunn? The one Billy Gunn didn't take off as a main event level gimmick?
And did not make this video package, no. So the winner of the King of the Ring tournament will get a title shot at SummerSlam.
Yeah, they made a point of saying that this made it the most high-stakes King of the Ring ever. This had never been the stipulation before.
The show comes to us from Nationwide Arena in Columbus, Ohio, June 23rd, 2002.
Which I believe Nationwide Arena was pretty new at that point. The home of the Columbus Blue Jackets of the NHL, who came into the league just a couple of years prior.
This was a legit sellout crowd of 14,198. This was the first pay-per-view sellout for WWE since that year's WrestleMania. We see the crowd, then we get a crowd shot at The World, which was WWE's theme restaurant in Times Square, New York City.
Well, Yeah, and if I recall, what happened was that, like, because it was originally WWF New York. We've talked about that on previous podcasts. They would have a wacky segment from there with somebody hosting, and then it was no longer WWF New York. It was then just the world, and then shortly thereafter, it was just not in existence. As we talked about, the scenario with that restaurant was that basically on pay-per-view nights, such as this, it would be bursting at the seams, a line to get in, and on a pay-per-view or Raw night, it was pretty much completely empty.
We hear the sweet baritone bass voice of Howard Finkel, the greatest ring announcer. I was thrilled to have him back. That's the beauty of these WWF shows, WWE shows, is getting to hear Howard Finkel. I'm always excited.
And I did not expect to hear him on this show, even though we did have a show that we reviewed from around the same time frame, where we're also surprised that Howard Finkel was on this. But much like that previous show, we see him a few times in the background, but they never identify him and they never make it a point to show him, because this was during that time period where Vince McMahon didn't want, I guess he thought Howard Finkel looked too old. So you could hear his voice, but they're not going to feature him, even though he's the best wrestling ring announcer of all time.
The pay-per-view will feature the semifinals and finals of the King of the Ring tournament, so we are shown brackets explaining how we got to the semifinals. X-Pac defeated Goldust. RVD beat Guerrero. RVD beat X-Pac to get to the finals, to get to the semifinals. The Big Valboski, the artist formerly known as Val Venus, he beat Christian. Jericho beat Edge, and then Jericho beat Valboski to advance.
I feel like we could do an entire podcast about how or why they thought that changing the name from Val Venus to the Big Valboski was going to improve or be different in any appreciable way. I guess it's different than Chief Morley, which we had described on a recent show, but yeah, still the same guy and the same gimmick.
Test beat Hurricane Helms. Hardcore Holly beat Tajiri. Test beat Hardcore Holly to make it to the semis. And then the bottom half of the bracket, Booker T beat Regal. Brock Lesnar beat Bubba Ray. Brock Lesnar beat Booker T to round out the semifinals. Now, Lesnar at this point is a rookie. He's a brand new, this is his first year in WWE.
Yeah, so he's a rookie in the sense of being on television. He had been in OVW for a while, and he had been doing dark matches on WWF or prior to WWF TV shows for quite a while, and doing house shows before he debuted on TV. But yes, he was a new TV character at this point for sure.
Lesnar beating Bubba Ray in the first round was a change. The original plan was for Lesnar to defeat Stone Cold Steve Austin in that first round match. Austin had already had issues with the creative ideas that were being pitched to him. And Austin's belief was that Lesnar should run through others to build to a future match with Austin.
Absolutely.
It could be a big money match down the line if they're kept apart.
Why? I would love to know what the reasoning was behind doing that as a first round match, particularly as you lay out the brackets, the other first round matches, and just the other guys in this tournament. You can make the argument, why is Steve Austin even in this tournament?
Exactly. He felt a first round King of the Ring match for their first meeting ever was a waste.
And he was right.
And it was the straw that broke the camel's back, a cumulative, another fallout with creative decisions. But this was the one that made Austin quit.
It almost seems, just thinking back to this time, because like you said, it wasn't the only thing that had been stirring between him and WWE. You almost wonder if this is one of those things that they did knowing there was no way he was going to go for it, and that they think, well, we'll get him to quit.
And quit he did. Austin walked out. They proceeded on television to then bury Austin like he was literally never coming back. They did a whole episode of WWE Confidential with McMahon and Jim Ross burying Austin like he was never coming back. And in fact, he didn't return until February of 2003. And then that 2003's WrestleMania 19, would be his retirement match. against
which
The
we
Rock.
covered
We covered
on this podcast.
Exactly.
And you were there in person for that, as we talked about.
Exactly. And if you're going to go back to our archives and listen to that, download part 1 and part 2 of that WrestleMania 19.
One of the biggest sources of frustration, a little behind the scenes, behind the curtain, is that there have been a few more people, not many, but a few more people that have downloaded part 2 than part 1, and we don't understand why this happens.
I don't know.
Go back and listen to part 1 and part 2.
Yeah, send us a tweet if you thought just listening to part 2 was acceptable. I want to hear from you. So let's get into the show. We open the show with a King of the Ring semifinal match. Chris Jericho versus the Intercontinental Champion Rob Van Damme.
Yes, I'm officially hyped as I see this match come down to the ring. As you mentioned the brackets, I also want to see the Eddie Guerrero versus Rob Van Damme match from earlier on in the tournament. But yes, Rob Van Damme and Chris Jericho, if not a first-time match by this point, it is certainly, to my eyes, going back and watching the show, a fresh match. And I do just want to mention again, we talked about it on a previous, it might have been the RVD Undertaker match, just how good of a job WWE did getting RVD's music right post ECW. Most guys that they brought in from ECW, they didn't have music that captured the vibe of what those guys were in ECW. Whereas with Rob Van Damme, they did a fantastic job with that.
They absolutely did. And it was a hard follow-up because he used to come out to Pantera's Walk, and
yes,
that's a fantastic theme song. So they did do a really good job. And you saw people singing and dancing in the crowd his entrance. Like there was ladies dancing in the front row. They were so excited.
This crowd, well, and even that's like the first tell. This is, especially early on in the show, this is a hot crowd. This crowd was ready for this match.
RVD chants right away. It's a stalemate to open the match. Stare down in the middle. RVD does the thumbs to the shoulder as the crowd chants, RVD. And Jericho just slaps him in the face.
Fantastic.
And as I'm giggling, RVD then just returns with a kick right to Jericho's face. Just a great back and forth.
We're viewing this, by the way, through a fog and haze. As no, this is not a smoke-filled arena from the 70s. It's just all the pyro, particularly from Rob Van Damme.
A ton of pyro.
Leaving us in a bit of a haze here.
Van Damme on the apron. Jericho goes for his springboard dropkick, but instead he jumps off the second rope like into a shoulder block. Van Damme moves, and Jericho he jumps from the second rope over the top all the way to the floor, crashing and burning.
Yeah, he used to do this nowhere near as often as the drop kick, but I feel like he used to do it in Japan and maybe even in Smoky Mountain, a little bit in WCW. But as time went by, he didn't do this very often. It was usually just the drop kick. This was surprising and a sort of a spectacularly executed crash and burn spot right at the beginning of the match.
RVD follows it up with a somersault plancha over the top, wiping out Jericho on the floor. Van Damme, he nails a kick off the top rope. Jericho uses the ref to crotch Van Damme on the top rope.
Yeah, Van Damme was going for a quick win after hitting that jumping sidekick. He ostensibly was going to the top for the 5-star frog splash, which, again, makes sense. Go for a quick win because best case scenario, you're going to have to win 2 matches tonight to be able to be the king of the ring.
This allows Jericho to do a double underhook suplex off the top.
This was awesome. Really double underhook superplex. Again, not something you see that often.
Van Damme got a near fall using his legs only to roll up Jericho, like Kung spinning. Lee.
Yes, a scissor takedown, and Jericho hits a clothesline coming right out of it, and then exposes the top turnbuckle. I did want to mention briefly that they're in the corner just before the sequence. Jericho's punching him, and you can tell he's doing it discreetly. But if you're a hardcore wrestling fan, you can tell when this happens. He is clearly calling spots, and that is something that you will notice throughout the match, that Jericho is clearly the one leading this match as we move along.
Like you mentioned, he removes the turnbuckle pad, so the top turnbuckle is exposed. The ref is trying to put the pad back on, not noticing RVD has rolled up Jericho in a small package. Finally counts, but only 2.
RVD was wishing that it was Red Shoes Uno from New Japan, who is the ref, who would just leave it there because they don't care.
Jericho choking Van Damme with the tape off his wrist. Jericho charges Van Damme in the corner. He moves. Jericho hits the post shoulder first. RVD on offense. One of my favorite moves he does is when he's holding the leg and he does the step over the leg and kicks the guy. Love that move. He follows it up with a round off into a standing moonsault.
Yeah, it was his sort of alternate Rolling Thunder. The Rolling Thunder was the bounce off the ropes, somersault, and then hit a forward somersault splash. Here, it was, like you said, the cartwheel into the moonsault. Very cool. And again, yeah, both guys busting out some stuff in this match that we didn't see them do every match, including just after this, RVD misses a clothesline and a leg sweep, and then Jericho hits the leg sweep and then hits an awesome leaping enziguri. That was a really cool, very crisply executed spot.
What was executed next was Rob Van Damme when Jericho, with a release German suplex, drops Van Damme on his head. Van Damme always took German suplexes like that, but every time it looks brutal.
And he never got hurt. Like he had other injuries, but he never had neck injuries. And yes, he gets launched. This is a throw as much as it is a suplex. He lands on the back of his head. We also should mention, because I don't think we mentioned it at the top, this is Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler on commentary for this entire show, even though this is a show that features both Raw and SmackDown wrestlers. This is in the middle of a hard brand split. And we get little segments interspersed with very casual Michael Cole and Taz looking no different than he does in the year 2020, previewing matches, but it is all the Raw announce team calling all these matches, including this one.
Right. They don't... Taz and Michael Cole don't even get a table. They're in a skybox somewhere.
Yeah, so. And if it's the way it's shot, it almost looks like they're green screened. They're not, but they could not. It does not look like any effort was put into their appearance at all.
Van Damme gives Jericho a hot shot. Jericho did an awesome job of not flying over the top rope here. He looked totally out of control, but he did a great job of controlling the fall the entire way.
Jericho was, to me, he was a star in this match. Like in terms of in ring, this is as good as I ever have seen Jericho look in his WWE run.
Van Damme with a split-legged moonsault off the top, nailed it perfectly. Van Damme counters a Walls of Jericho attempt into a roll-up for a great near fall. Crowd is really into it here. Van Damme tries to slingshot Jericho into the exposed buckle, but he lands on the middle rope. Van Damme rammed into the exposed buckle. Jericho rolls him up, puts his feet on the ropes, but Van Damme still kicks out.
Yes, this was a really, really slick sequence that actually started with Jericho going for a drop kick. Like you said, RVD catches him, tries to catapult him into the corner. Jericho, all in one motion, jumps to the second rope, comes off, going for essentially a crossbody. RVD catches him with a kick, and then runs in, and like you said, Jericho bounces his head off the turnbuckle, goes for that illegal pin, only gets two. We then get as I call it, the running hair bulldog from Jericho, where it's a bulldog, but it's not a headlock. That was always the precursor to the lion salt, which it was here. He goes for that, lands on his feet, and gets caught with another Rob Van Dam spin kick,
which allows Van Dam to go up top, but he misses the 5-star frog splash. Jericho hits a lion salt, another great near fall. People were so into this match at this point.
People were losing their minds here. People go nuts on that near fall. Huge RVD chance at this point. And this match already, it's not even over yet, and it is fantastic.
No, people loved RVD here. There's an awkward finish here where so Jericho's on the top rope. Van Dam's on the apron outside. Jericho rams Van Dam into the post and then tries to pull him up to the top, and then nothing happens for a few seconds. And then Van Dam kicks Jericho, who falls off the top, crotching himself. We get the 5-star frog splash, 3 count. Your winner's Rob Van Dam. It was a little clunky to get there, but then the finishing sequence was fantastic. A great 5-star frog splash, 3 count. Rob Van Dam's your winner. He's going to the finals, 14 minutes, 32 seconds.
Yeah, this was a great pro wrestling match. The finish, or the setup to the finish, I guess, didn't bother me as much as it bothered you. I definitely see what you're saying, but I don't think it really detracted from it. And again, they for a 15-minute match, you're not going to see one much better than this. And really, the last line of my notes on this match was awesome match. RVD looked great, but if you're watching closely, you can tell it's Jericho that really led and carried this match and helped make Rob Van Damme look great.
He absolutely did. Both men come out shining bright after that match. Fantastic opener. Lawler interviews RVD in the ring post-match. He asks, any preference, Test or Lesnar? Whatever. And he calls Lesnar Godzilla. Then Jericho attacks Van Damme, puts him in the walls of Jericho. The beating continues until Fit Finlay and a bunch of refs come and pull him off.
And my thought as I'm watching this is Fit Finlay could beat the hell out of everyone on the show. And then like very shortly after this, or within a few years after this, Fit Finlay, who had been retired, he gets a second lease on life and has in terms of his active wrestling career, and has a pretty long run as an active wrestler in WWE.
Paul Heyman and Lesnar are in the back, where he's explaining that tonight you go from the next big thing to the king of the ring. Heyman's awesome. Everything. Yeah, he's fantastic in this whole show.
Heyman's whole role at this point in Brock Lesnar's career on screen is to just pump him up. He's constantly telling Brock Lesnar how great he is, how he can do this, how he's the next big thing. This is what you need to do. And my notes here just say, oh my God, Brock is so huge. He is like, his arms, like if he put his arms outstretched, he has a greater wingspan than a 747. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely. And we're at the other semifinal match now, Test versus Brock Lesnar. I was really surprised at how this match went. I was expecting a Brock Lesnar destruction of Test. However, as you mentioned with the brand split, it looks like Test was in line to get a big push on the brand he was on, because they really let him shine here.
Lesnar let him try to shine. It was also weird because this is like at least the second attempt that they had made at making Test a big time guy. I mean, you go all the way back to the origins of the Stephanie Triple H, relationship and angle and all of that. They were giving it another go here with Test. To me, he was doomed from just the bleeps and bloops and this is a test of his music. Like nothing screams mid-card jobber more than that. But yeah, the match starts. Test is actually a little bit taller than Brock. They go nose to nose, and it begins with what was kind of a trope for this show, which was the aggressive collar and elbow tie-up going back into the corner. I feel like almost every match had a variation of that, which by WWE standards is not the worst trope to follow, but it definitely was noticeable as the show went along. Also notable, Jim Ross with a call here he calls Paul Heyman as, quote, a fever blister on the lips of life, unquote. And I just thought this is an insult that is forged through more than a decade of working together, going all the way back to their WCW days.
Just want to go back to when Lesnar entered the ring. He always does that jump to the apron from the floor. But he also leaped over the top rope into the ring, which I wrote down Brock Lesnar is a terrifying athlete at the moment that happened. It actually
it's a
300-pound guy that just jumps over the top rope with ease. It was impressive. So Lesnar, he opens with the shoulders to the midsection of Test in the corner. We get a light Goldberg chant right out of the gate. Test answers with a stiff clothesline to Lesnar. I don't know if he knocked him silly here or what a little bit, but it was a bold choice by Test to hit Lesnar that hard.
Yeah. He then goes for the big boot, and Lesnar ducks to the floor, which may have actually been him legitimately trying to get his wits about him after that clothesline.
For how huge he is, it's amazing to see the agility that Lesnar did, just grabbing the top rope and sliding under the bottom rope like that. Watching him move, it's just so impressive. Heyman's coaching him on the outside. Don't let him hit the boot. Watch the boot.
It's fantastic.
Test beats Lesnar down in the corner, if you can believe that. I can't believe I have that in my notes.
He's throwing those diesel back elbows in the corner because if you wear leather pants and you're more than 6'6", you have to do all of Kevin Nash's moves, and Test definitely abided by those rules here.
Lesnar gets hit with 2 elbows, no-sells it, and then hits Test with a spine buster. After a near fall, Lesnar picks Test up enough to nail him with a forearm across the face. That was awesome.
Yeah, on the mat. Yeah, this was almost like an MMA style deal where he's got him up and out of the way and just lays in like a forearm elbow. He then picks him up for his big, backbreaker from a body slam type position where he's got him and then he lifts him way up above his head, goes down with that side backbreaker. But Test tries to fight back because this is going to for some reason be a 50-50 match, like you said, with Brock Lesnar and Test.
As a rookie, now remember, this is Lesnar's first year in WWE. Lesnar has amazing facial expressions.
Yes.
He is his selling, his aggressiveness on offense. His facial expressions are better than a lot of veterans that they had at the time.
Well, it's very interesting too because he could not cut a promo at that point to save his life, which is why Paul Heyman is there with him. But all the other non-physical in terms of actual wrestling aspects of his wrestling, he was great at. It was just, he projected very well. It just didn't extend to promos.
Test hits a sidewalk slam on Lesnar. Test continuing to get a ton of offense in. Full Nelson slam for a near fall.
Well, before we get that full Nelson slam, I just have to mention, because I really like this match, but there was one really, really weird spot just before what you mentioned. Brock throws Test off the ropes. Test tries to reverse it, but kind of his grip slips off. Test then tries to put on a sleeper, and Brock is not going for that at all. Brock hits some big clubbing blows and then yells at him to get up, and then they redo the spot, and Test hits, like you said, a terrifying side slam. I did not know that it was possible to almost take a brainbuster bump off a side slam, but that's what happened here.
After the full Nelson slam, we get a pump handle slam for a near fall.
Which was his finisher, the pump handle power slam.
Yeah, Heyman's going nuts at ringside. Test nails his big boot.
Shrieks. He shrieks, literally shrieks when Brock kicks out. It is amazing.
Yeah, so Test's move now is the big boot here, and he nails it. Lesnar barely kicks out, like a really long 2 count. It was really surprising. Test goes for another boot. Heyman jumps up, takes a swing at Test, trying to distract him. This allows Lesnar to come in, hit an F5, gets the victory. Lesnar to the finals, 8 minutes, 18 seconds.
This was really fun, but it like you said, it was strange that it was so 50-50. It was also weird watching this again through 2020 eyes to see that Lesnar basically only won because Heyman saved him from getting hit with the big boot. In some ways, this felt, maybe this is a weird comparison, but this felt like watching the Road Warriors in that match with the Hart Foundation on the WrestleFest 91 tape, where you're so used to the guys being completely dominant, and instead they're a very impressive guy, but sort of just a 50-50 guy. But still, a very good mean guy match, as I like to say.
Bubba Ray tells Coach that he wants to make an impact. Lance Storm is mad that it's not Jericho and Test in an all-Canadian final. Christian says that the WWE is prejudiced against Canadians to start their Team Canada storyline.
By the way, they're being interviewed by a man named Greg Lloyd, who I literally have no recollection of in my life. He's like that guy that was on the Starrcade 86 pay-per-view.
Sure.
Or show that we like. I'm wondering, is this Glacier's brother? Greg Lloyd, Ray Lloyd. I have no idea who this guy is. I don't know how long he was there. And I was watching the product at this time, but I guess he was just so interchangeable with the other guys they had doing interviews or doing broadcasting at that point.
Cruiserweight Championship. Jamie Noble with Nydia versus the Cruiserweight Champion Hurricane Helms.
This match, by the way, just very quickly, Jeremy, was previewed, as we talked about, by Michael Cole and Taz. What in the world was Michael Cole wearing? He
business casual Michael Cole.
His look is wow. A long beige button-up shirt, not tucked in, with a white t-shirt under it. He looks as though his girlfriend just broke up with him, and then he decided to go bowling by himself.
The story in this match is that Nydia was Hurricane's stalker. And so we get a video package with lots of Nydia and Jamie Noble making out. Jamie Noble's her boyfriend coming to... So the Hurricane and Nydia are exes, and Jamie's the new boyfriend, and
they're trailer park freaks is the whole thing. They keep talking about how Nydia is a freak and Jamie Noble is from the trailer park, and they tell us this over and over and over and over again. And the cruiserweight title, you would think, as we've talked about on previous shows, whether it be WCW or WWF, that the cruiserweight title is a showcase for small, great wrestlers to have a great match to fill that sort of spot on the show. Not here in 2002 WWF, and not in or WWE, I should say, and really very rarely in WWE history did it have that role. Instead, this was just another wacky storyline.
Yeah, well, and it was two small guys doing a regular WWE match. So that
exactly,
there was
very little
high
flying,
yeah.
Very little quickness, and again, two very good wrestlers. Hurricane, Gregory Helms, Shane Helms, whatever you want to call him, very entertaining at times, and Jamie Noble, a great sort of mat ground wrestler. But this was kind of really, in a lot of ways, the picture perfect example of the WWF Cruiserweight division really not even needing to exist if they were going to do it this way, because it didn't feel any different from any of the other matches we saw in this show.
The Jamie Noble character, by the way, I think is awesome. He was such a great promo, and he was so good at this trailer park trash character, this West Virginia hick character. He was so good at it and so entertaining that anytime he's yelling "Jamie Noble, boy," I'm laughing. I'm like, God, he is so good, and he's great in this match too. We'll get to it as we go through it.
But I would have loved to have seen him. This, like you said, he was a great character, great sort of non-high flying base of a cruiserweight. Him in a early 2000s WWE cruiserweight division filled with high flyers would have been like he would have been looked at the same level as like a Dean Malenko type in the heyday of the WCW cruiserweight division, when it was Dean having cool matches with a bunch of high flyers.
Absolutely. And fun fact, Helms and Noble had a prior feud in WCW as Helms was with 3 Count and Noble was with the Young Dragons.
Absolutely. It's funny too, because of all the guys that made it from WCW, or that came over, I should say, and didn't make it, that these two guys ended up having long careers in the WWF.
All Helms early, including a Shining Wizard, which got no reaction whatsoever. And in 2002, like this is a big move in Japan at this point.
Oh yeah. Well, this was Keiji Muto, as we talked about on previous New Japan episodes. It's Keiji Muto's career changed, and he changed his look and his character and went away from doing the moonsault every match. He created this Shining Wizard. This was a finisher, and it was just, I believe Hurricane was one of the first, if not the first guys to bring this over to the US, but it was just a move, no different from like effectiveness wise of like a drop kick here early in this match.
There's a woman out there, so of course the King has to keep talking about her and interrupting Ross from calling the match. This was so annoying the entire time. It's not like it's even funny, and you could, it's just like you're detracting away from Jim Ross being able to do his job. Knock it off. And
yes, wasn't Nydia also, along with Maven, one of the winners of the initial Tough Enough
original
on MTV?
That is
a men's and women's winner. Yes.
Noble is so technically sound in this match. He's crisp in everything he does. I was enjoying all of his work here. Helms off the middle rope, flipping over Noble into a neckbreaker. Hurricane suplexes Noble from the inside of the ring to the floor. This was a rough landing. He could have blown out a knee or an ankle.
he kind of gets his foot caught, or almost gets his foot caught in between the apron and the ring. And if that had fully gotten caught, yeah, you're waving goodbye to your ACL for sure.
Yeah, that was terrifying. Hurricane with a crossbody off the top to the floor. This was probably one of the most spectacular moves in this match.
It was the only really like cruiserweighty move in the match.
Both men on the top turnbuckle together. They're trying to get their footing. This was absolutely terrifying. I don't know what they were setting up for, but they at this moment and watching them both try to get their footing on the top rope, it was nerve-wracking. Hurricane finally nails a perfect swinging neck breaker off the top.
Yeah, so I think this is exactly what they're going for. It's tough to get in position for, because it's not like a superplex where both guys are actually in the corner. One guy's sitting on the corner.
Angle.
Here you have, the only thing I can compare this to as far as the setup, it's very similar to the setup for a Super Hurricane Rana, a top where both guys are standing on the top rope and one guy jumps up to do the Rana, and you actually have to have both guys standing on the top rope. That's how this was for this. It took them a while to set it up, but it was spectacular when he hit this flying reverse neck breaker off the top, and it got a huge, huge pop.
Nydia takes the ref to prevent the 3 count after this move. She tries to slap Hurricane, but he grabs her wrist. Noble comes flying in, accidentally knocking Nydia off the apron. Turns around into a chokeslam by Helms for only a 2 count. The whole building bought that as the finish, and they were shocked that he kicked out here. Hurricane to the top. He gets crotched by Noble. Powerbomb by Noble. Goes for the pin. Hurricane gets his foot on the rope, but Nydia walking past knocks it off. The referee counts 3. New Cruiserweight champion, Jamie Noble. The match picked up a ton in the last few minutes. Definitely. They went 11 minutes and 38 seconds.
Yeah, it's definitely a good match. It's one of those, like a lot of cruiserweight matches in the WWE, where you think, man, in a different environment with these two guys, this would have been even better. That power bomb by Noble, by the way, was a nasty power bomb. That was in the tradition of the early days of Nitro, whenever you had Benoit versus Guerrero or Guerrero versus Malenko, and they would all do this sort of same type of power bomb that was just, you'd see it happen and you'd wonder every time how somebody wasn't concussed.
Speaking of Eddie Guerrero, he's in the back being interviewed by Terry Runnels.
Yeah, when was she a backstage interviewer? This was like it was fine, but it was another one of those things I didn't recall.
She was not good at it.
Well, but Eddie basically talked the whole time, so it was
correct. Fine. But yeah, she was not great. We do see a clip from Raw where Flair gets attacked by Benoit and Guerrero
because they blamed Ric Flair for Steve Austin leaving the company,
right?
And that because Benoit was going to have a match with Steve Austin, I believe, on this pay-per-view was the idea, or Guerrero was going to, one of them was going to, and they were mad because they missed out on their big opportunity because Austin was gone, and they blamed Ric Flair for that.
So Flair's story here is that he's telling everyone he's got one run left in him, and Eddie isn't worried. He's in his prime. Flair won't be able to keep up. I do remember this Flair storyline, and it does pick up later on in his one last run here. But we first.
Well, this is in the immediate aftermath of, as they mentioned, the announcers mentioned that Flair had just 2 weeks earlier lost a no holds barred match to Vince McMahon in Atlanta, Georgia, of all places, I believe on Raw.
To get control of the company.
Yeah. Yes, it was basically the winner got full control of Raw because Ric Flair was the co-owner of Monday Night Raw, as weird of a sentence as that is. And so Flair lost here. And so Flair's his only opportunity to continue in WWE was as a wrestler. And so he was going to, like you said, have one last run, and it needed to start here against Eddie Guerrero.
Ric Flair versus Eddie Guerrero. Flair comes out first, and he comes out not to the theme from 2001. He comes out to like an overdubbed 1992. Yeah. That's like his when he first jumped from the NWA in 92. This was that theme song where they gave him the knockoff 2001 version. They had that as the overdub. It was really weird because that is not the theme song he was using in actual 2002 here for this show.
I don't know. The other thing I'll say, I don't think these are overdubs or photoshopping. good Lord, Ric Flair was in incredible shape here.
That's exactly what I have in my notes.
He had abs, man. He looked unbelievable physically here, particularly when you go back to just a couple of years earlier, actually a year earlier, at the end of Nitro, the very last episode of WCW Monday Nitro.
He wrestled in a shirt.
He wrestled Sting in the last ever match on WCW Monday Nitro in a t-shirt because he was so lacking in confidence over how his physique looked.
Flair is 53 years old here in this match. And in my notes, it literally says, wow, Flair is in phenomenal shape. So, yeah, absolutely. For 53, just absolutely incredible, especially when you see Hogan later, who was 49. We'll get to that. Guerrero is showing his speed early, just showing how much faster he is than Flair.
Sort of bouncing around and really mocking Flair. There's a few times where they lock up. Eddie sort of wins that lockup battle and is bouncing around doing the Ric Flair strut, mocking him. And these two guys were just absolutely oozing charisma. You still have Ric Flair, even though he's older, pretty close to the height of his powers. Eddie Guerrero at his, the height of his at least WWE style charisma. And it's crazy just to see these two guys in the ring with each other because it only happened a few times. And when it happened in WCW, it was very early on in Eddie Guerrero's run in WCW, where he's still very good, but pretty much just playing a very generic babyface character.
Flair gets Eddie in the corner and lights him up with one single chop. Yes. Eddie flies in the air, just awesome selling for this one chop. It was great. Flair celebrates, and the crowd is behind everything Ric Flair does.
And at this point, I'm wondering, why did they have Ric Flair in a non-wrestling role for so long?
Yeah.
Because, ever. But particularly, when he came in and they had him doing the whole ownership thing, you're sitting there thinking, well, especially when you saw how he looked on that Nitro, okay, Flair, he just doesn't have it anymore. And then you see him here, and it's like, good Lord, you guys missed out.
They trade chops in the corner. Flair on offense, more chops. Flair with a delayed vertical suplex, holding Eddie up there for it. Guerrero then gets control by drop kicking Flair in the knee. And we get one of my favorite things in this world, Adam. Flair screaming in pain.
Yes, I wrote
that
down.
And it adds so much to a move like that. A simple drop kick to the knee, but the way that Flair screams in agony, it just adds so much to it.
For sure. Oh, one thing I just want to briefly mention, we also had the classic Ric Flair spot a few sequences before this where Flair grabs Eddie Guerrero in a headlock, then tells the referee to check the time. And as the referee turns to go to the timekeeper, Flair hits a mule kick low blow. And it's classic Ric Flair.
Eddie works over Flair's leg. Eddie puts Flair in a figure four. Flair's able to get to the ropes. Flair backdrops Guerrero over the top to the floor. Eddie's back in, suplex, then to the top, and he misses the frog splash here. Flair chop blocks Eddie's knee, and then
to the
Flair
front of the knee.
Yes.
That was nasty. I don't recall ever seeing that before in that way. Steve McMichael of all people would do the running chop block to the leg, but the guy would just jump over him to where it really didn't look like it connected. This was
Eddie
nasty looking
here.
and very cool.
Flair goes to work in classic Flair form on Eddie's leg, leading to Benoit making his way down to ringside. Flair has Eddie in a figure four this time. He gets to the ropes. Guerrero hits a tornado DDT, but Flair gets his foot on the rope.
Even just seeing Ric Flair take this tornado DDT,
it was weird.
It was fantastic. It was weird. It was great. And it was indicative of the fact that Flair, for the duration of this run, was going to be working his ass off. Not that Ric Flair ever really dogged it, but you could tell he was excited for these matches with different guys, and he was going all in on this.
Eddie distracts the referee, allowing Benoit to pull Flair out to the floor, and Benoit puts the crippler crossface on Flair outside the ring on the floor.
Yeah, very briefly, but just enough long enough, obviously, to do damage and not get caught, or so we think. The ref never sees Benoit doing this, but he senses that Benoit has interfered, and Benoit does not have a manager's license. He should not be out there. So the referee throws Chris Benoit. Hey, I'm choosing to believe that this is like the 80s where they still did the manager's license.
I like it.
So
yes, Benoit sent to the back.
They wouldn't even call it, by the way, manager in WWF at this point. This is one agent. of the it was one of the Vince McMahon isms where anytime you had someone outside of the ring, they're an agent. Paul Heyman, later years, Paul Heyman as an advocate. You couldn't call him a manager. But yes, Chris Benoit is thrown out. And at that point, as the referee is still distracted, we have an appearance from somebody else who we saw earlier on this show.
Bubba Ray Dudley here to make his impact, sneaks in from behind, hits a Bubba bomb on Guerrero, which is, by the way, an incredibly stupid move.
This
is a stupid move. Go ahead. Tell him how stupid
he puts his opponent in a full Nelson.
Yep.
He then picks him up and then he sits out with it. So basically they both sit out, and this is, I guess, this jars your tailbone to the point where you can't kick out. Like, this was his finisher at this time.
Yeah, it was
really dumb.
Benoit chases Bubba out. Flair crawls into the ring, onto Eddie, gets the 3 count. Your winner is Ric Flair. 17 minutes. I wanted this to be better than it was. It's hard to explain. It's hard to explain why this didn't click here for me, but I mean, I enjoyed it. It's a Ric Flair Eddie Guerrero match, but like, I don't know if my expectations were too high or what, but it was hard to explain. Something didn't click here for me.
I almost think timing wise, it was caught in between, in that it was a 17-minute match where a lot of the things that they did, a lot of the classic Ric Flair things that they did are working over the knee. Those things come off as more effective or more believable in terms of the guy selling the pain and the exhaustion if you're going 25, 30 minutes. But it also wasn't like a quick 10-minute match. I really liked it, but to me, the ending was really deflating. Like, once Benoit came out and then Bubba came out, and then it was obvious that was going to be the finish. It killed it a little bit for me, but it might have been it. But yeah, it was still for late stage Ric Flair, particularly a Ric Flair who had not been active in a long time, with Eddie Guerrero here within the confines of what the normal WWE structure of a match. It was still pretty good. But like you said, I think they were, even after this, I think they would have been capable of putting on better matches than this.
So you mentioned at the top of the show they had just changed the company name from World Wrestling Federation and the WWF initials to World Wrestling Entertainment. So they had the "Get the F Out" slogan. We see another commercial here for that. So
this commercial, by the way, is so dumb. It is a guy in a bar, but instead of a head, his head is the WWF scratch logo. This logo head man is using really cheesy pickup lines on actual human women in this bar, and then it ends with them all telling him to get the F out. Cool.
Good stuff. What is cool is Harvard Chris Nowinski is eating at the World with William Regal at his table. I want to be at that table.
I don't know what this segment was supposed to accomplish, though.
I don't know. No. William Regal calls the waitress a silly tart, and that's all I got out of this segment.
They make fun of her for being from a community college, and then she retaliates by sticking her finger in Chris Nowinski's food, which he doesn't see, and then eats it. Pro wrestling, apparently.
Women's Championship. Challenger Molly Holly versus the champion Trish Stratus.
And this match, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the in-ring, because this match was actually really fun for the little bit of time they were allotted. This made me violently angry, right up there with, and maybe eclipsing, some of the other bad Jerry Lawler commentary that we've talked about from around this time period on this podcast. The storyline of this match was that Molly Holly, who was challenging Trish Stratus for the WWE Women's Championship, they were basically saying that she was like the women's equivalent of Rikishi, that she had a giant ass and was overweight. Apparently Jerry Lawler had gotten the crowd in previous weeks to chant "she's a fat ass" to Molly Holly, and so that chant gets going here. And the thing to note, for one, this would be reprehensible even if she was a much larger woman than she was at this time. But she is short, she is tiny, And you mentioned this off the air, Jeremy, before we started, and we were commiserating about this, that like we are seeing one thing clearly with our eyes as far as what this human being looks like, and then what the announcers are saying. And it's not just even Lawler. Jim Ross is getting in on the cracks too. Like, it's like there's a completely different human being in the ring that they're seeing. This was horrible and infuriating.
It was so weird. Like you mentioned, the story is that she's got a big ass and they're making fun of her about it. And I'm looking, I can see her in the ring, and yes. and this is not true. And it's just weird what you're talking about this thing. And I'm just like, why? The whole thing was bizarre. Just
it
really
didn't make any sense. It was counterproductive. It added nothing to it. And it was just, again, much like the Cruiserweight match, it was everything had to have some sort of storyline. And if it wasn't going to be good, it was going to be stupid or offensive. And this checked both of those boxes.
But like you said, it was a fun match. All Molly early, and she's really good. Yes. She's one of the most underrated performers of this time.
Absolutely.
Molly with a drop toe hold, clotheslines Trish on the bottom rope, and we are immediately reminded about how great Trish is at selling. She looks like she kills herself on that move. And I'm like, every time we see Trish, no one takes a beating like Trish does. She's spectacular.
No, and she got very good very quickly in a time where there were not a lot of wrestlers to work with and less very good wrestlers. Like when she first started wrestling, it was basically, she could have matches with Jacqueline, who was good. She could have matches with Victoria, but like she should not have gotten as good as she did as quickly as she did.
No, and Molly dished out
credit to her that she did.
Absolutely. And Molly dished out a great beating here. And we had Molly is able to counter the Stratisfaction Bulldog into a German suplex with a bridge for a long 2 count. Molly Holly goes to the top rope, misses the Molly go round, which is her flip off the top rope.
Just a top rope front flip somersault with the opponent standing, that basically she hits it and immediately lands in a pinning predicament.
Yeah, so Trish moves here. She lands on her ass, allowing for some more ass jokes from King and JR. And we get a roll-up by Trish. Molly reverses the roll-up, so she's on top, holding the tights, gets the 3 count. The new women's champion, Molly Holly. This was 5 minutes and 41 seconds, but Molly got a ton of stuff in here in her 5 minutes. This was a lot of action. Pretty good stuff from them.
Yeah, no, the match was perfectly enjoyable. A great way to spend 6 minutes. When it's over, Jerry Lawler says, "I guess it was survival of the fattest," and I'm like,
"What?
Again? What are you what and who are you talking about?" And then apparently, from a comment that Jim Ross made at the end of the match, that not only was her gimmick that she was fat, it was also that she was a virgin. Like, so dumb, and again, so unnecessary.
In the back, we have an interview with Kurt Angle. He had recently lost a hair match, so his head is shaved for the first time. So to hide his bald head, he has a wig on with amateur wrestling headgear holding the wig on.
Basically the Rick Steiner headgear with this completely.
I love everything about this. This was fantastic.
The thing about Angle it was so great, and I almost think he was so funny that it was almost to his detriment at times, because he's this unbelievable Olympic gold medalist killer, but he is just hilarious, self-deprecating, incredible comedic timing. And so they focus on that with him every bit as much as the great athleticism, but he was hilarious here. He has a great line that he says he's going to make Hulk Hogan tap faster than Mr. Bojangles on speed. Okay. It was great.
He had a good one. Kurt says that Hogan's not a real American hero. He's what Vince McMahon wants him to be. And if Vince wanted Hogan to be a zookeeper, he would have been a zookeeper.
Yes. Well, I guess this whole match was the real American hero match. That's what this was. We get another interlude with Cole and with a casual Cole, I should say, and Taz. We go to a video package, basically laying this all out, that Hogan wanted to retire. Vince McMahon came out and said, "There's no chance that I'll let you retire." Hogan says he wants a match with Vince McMahon, which that comes later. But Angle attacks him from behind. We then see in a match or something in the ring on SmackDown, Hogan rips the wig off and reveals that Angle is bald. Angle says he's no joke and he's going to embarrass Hulk Hogan. And then the next thing we hear is the fake Jimi Hendrix music, and out comes the Hulk.
Yeah, Hollywood Hulk Hogan versus Kurt Angle. Hogan out first, and we get our Jimi Hendrix Voodoo Child bad overdub version. And
again, that's the one thing WWE did not do as well as WCW on, was knockoffs of popular music for entrance music. This was no DDP Smells Like Teen Spirit.
No, if you want to hear my Voodoo Child appreciation story, listen to the WrestleMania 19 episode of this podcast.
Yes,
where I go into deep description about my love for Hogan's use of Voodoo Child as his theme song. We're deep in the Hogan nostalgia tour here.
Yes,
that would climax at WrestleMania 19 with a match against Vince McMahon, like we mentioned.
And Hogan had already won and lost the Undisputed Championship by this point.
Yep. Hogan showing his power early, throwing Kurt down, shoulder blocks. Hogan beats up Angle on the floor.
Hogan is absolutely massive here, by the way. He's moving. He's not moving great, but he's actually moving significantly better than I expected him to, given his age, the wear and tear on his body, and just the sheer bulk. He is so much bigger here than, let's say, like in 1993 as he ends his previous WWF run.
Back in the ring, Hogan tries to take the headgear off of Angle, but Angle hits him with a low blow, which allows Angle on offense. He hits a couple of belly-to-back suplexes on Hogan. Angle with a long sleeper. Ref checks. Hogan's arm drops twice, but the finger is waving, not dropping a third time. As the crowd gets behind Hogan, again, riding the nostalgia tour. Hogan's playing the greatest hits here, and everybody's eating it up. Another belly-to-back suplex, though, keeps Angle in control. Angle slam. Hogan kicks out after the long 2 count, and then he starts hulking
Place goes
up.
Nuts for that, by the way. The Angle slam was still very well protected at this point. We weren't at the stage to where, having Angle and Shawn Michaels and Angle hitting 4 Angle slams.
No, Hogan starts hulking up, the 3 punches, the big boot. The place is going absolutely crazy for this. They love the Hogan nostalgia. Instead of the leg drop, Hogan instead takes the headgear and the wig off of Angle.
This was fantastic. Angle freaks out about being bald. And then Hogan goes for the big boot again. Angle bells to the floor and says, "Screw you," and walks out for the count out, basically giving, conceding defeat. He doesn't want to deal with it. Once he get counted out, Hogan grabs the hairpiece, puts it on his head, starts mocking Angle, and starts doing his classic Hogan poses with the hairpiece on. Angle sees this, gets extremely mad, and runs in the ring.
He grabs a chair.
Grabs a chair, runs into the ring, swings the steel chair, and does the classic Kurt Angle spot where he misses his intended target, hits the top rope of the chair ricochets back into his head, and he sells it like he's straight out of the Three Stooges. This is tremendous, and it also, again, shows Kurt Angle's versatility as this guy who can have unbelievable, serious, matches with amateur stylings. Go back to that WrestleMania 19 show, the podcast of that, the match that he had with Brock Lesnar. Whereas here, a lot of this match is Kurt Angle just, at his comedic selling best. It was so unbelievable,
super
particularly given how early on he was in his career at this point. We're only a couple years into his run in WWE.
Big boot after that chair, after he hit himself in the face with the chair. Big boot from Hogan, goes for the leg drop, but Angle catches the leg on the way down, counters it into the ankle lock. This was awesome. I was not expecting this counter at all. Neither were the people. The crowd is chanting for Hogan. He tries to roll out of the ankle lock. He tries to kick Angle off, but Angle keeps hanging on the entire time. So
he hangs on and rolls through.
Yeah, he's flipped the switch from the comedic angle to serious, dangerous opponent angle here.
With the ankle lock, he's basically Ken Shamrock getting in the zone here.
Hogan's able to finally get to the ropes. But Angle immediately just slaps it right back on in the center of the ring. The ankle locks right back on, and Hogan has nowhere to go. He taps out. I
did not expect this. This is a show I watched, but I did not. I remember nothing of this feud. I remember nothing of this match, and I absolutely did not remember this finish of Hulk Hogan cleanly tapping out to Kurt Angle's ankle lock exactly. Babyface Hulk Hogan. I honestly don't recall ever seeing babyface Hulk Hogan submit before.
No.
So this was huge, and this was Hulk Hogan doing business here in the early 2000s in the WWE, making guys, which is not the role you expect to ever see Hulk Hogan in.
No, and this was no fluke win. This was Angle won this match. He tapped Hogan out, no doubt about it. Hogan put
this wasn't
over
like
Angle like $1 million here.
This wasn't like Billy Kidman beating Hulk Hogan, where it really was only a victory on paper. And if you actually watch the match, Hogan got himself far more over than the guy that he supposedly put over. This was not that. This was very, very strong in making Kurt Angle.
It was a great last few minutes of this match.
Yes.
Angle
more than you could have ever asked for, really, given that this was Hulk Hogan in 2002. Again, you go back, obviously, the match with The Rock. There were performances or matches in this run with Hulk Hogan that had no business being as good as they actually ended up being. And I would put this, like you said, particularly the finishing stretch of this, definitely into that category.
12 minutes, 8 seconds on that. Then we get a segment with Goldust and Booker T in the back. Goldust is doing an impression of The Rock. The Rock actually comes up behind him while he's doing his impression. Booker says you don't need to worry about him, worry about Booker. The Rock makes fun of Goldust. The Rock does an impression of him, and then he does an impression of Goldust, and he just goes, "Just stop doing that. Don't do that. Stop doing that." And that was super funny. I really loved it. That was great.
It was very good.
So Rock tells everybody that he's here for the championship match later. Right now,
he also says that. So they say something basically about how none of them get along, but they all agree that they need to take on the NWO. And this is the moment where I remember that, yes, we had that brief, weird fever dream of an interlude where the NWO was in the WWE, but they really weren't. I mean, we'll see a little bit more with that later. They were just kind of like every other faction.
Well, yeah, and Nash got hurt, and there was a bunch of stuff that derailed things they wanted to do. But it was still,
it was
Scott
not
Hall
going to
imploded.
work.
No, it was never going to work. Yeah,
it was never going to work because that's the one thing that the WWF, WWE has never been able to execute properly are those invasion angles. They can't do it. It never works well, and it didn't here with the NWO.
Yeah, stuff that they didn't create, they'll never take seriously. King of the Ring finals: Brock Lesnar versus Rob Van Damme. RVD starts out with kicks to the leg of Lesnar. Van Damme tries to monkey flip Lesnar out of the corner, but Lesnar power bombs him instead. Lesnar's in control. He holds Van Damme like he's going to do a fallaway slam, but instead herks him up and over into a power slam.
This was crazy. So this was, like you said, it looks like he's going to do a fallaway slam or like he's going to do that backbreaker that we talked about earlier on in the show. Instead, he picks him up and jumps and spins in midair with like a spinning standing power slam. This looks like something you would only see in a video game, which I guess is fitting because Brock Lesnar himself looks like something straight out of a video game. At this point, Paul Heyman just keeps yelling over and over to Brock, title shot at SummerSlam, title shot at SummerSlam. And that was great. He then hits a couple of huge backbreakers, and Jim Ross basically says, outside of the fact that he's inexperienced, Brock Lesnar has no weaknesses at all. And when you're watching this, it's hard to disagree.
Long bear hug by Lesnar. Heyman screaming on the outside, squeeze, squeeze.
I'll also note that the crowd was really not into this match at this point, which is very surprising to me given how over Rob Van Dam was earlier. I don't know if it's just because they already saw him. And Brock Lesnar, while he was a visual marvel, he was not the massive over main event character that he would be, by the end of this part of his run.
Van Damme battles back with kicks, including a kick off the top rope, finally knocking Lesnar down. Lesnar kicks out by pressing Van Damme off him, like throwing him off with authority.
Yes.
Van Damme back to the top, nails Lesnar with the 5-star frog splash. Heyman jumps on the apron, grabs Van Damme. Heyman's up on the apron, grabs Van Damme.
He snaps RVD's neck on the ropes, basically.
Yeah, he clotheslines him on the top rope. And Van Damme falls back onto Lesnar, who's still down. And we get a good near fall here. People are now getting into the match.
This spot is what got people into it, and it was great because, like you said, he hits the frog splash. Paul tries to save his guy by snapping his neck on the top rope, but RVD falls on Lesnar for that long too, and then we see a close-up of Paul Lee on the floor, like freaking out that not only did he almost cost his man the match, but probably thinking, oh my God, my life may be over if I cost Brock Lesnar his shot to win the King of the Ring. I also just wanted to note that I thought it was cool that here in this match is where Rob Van Dam busted out the regular Rolling Thunder. I like that he did the handspring moonsault version in the first match, and then he busted out the regular version here. And that's, like you said, that's where that huge kick out from Lesnar took place.
Van Dam knocks Heyman down. Van Dam off the second rope, backward, like twisting. He jumps off backward, twisting into a crossbody.
But like that almost moonsault that you see guys do, where it's that they're back to the ring, crossbody, sort of rounding, but not a full moonsault.
But Lesnar catches him in midair, throws him onto his shoulders for an F5 for the victory. Lesnar is your King of the Ring. Only 5 minutes and 42 seconds on that final.
Yeah, this was basically the same length as the women's match. So yeah, if you're wondering, oh, well, why didn't you guys talk more in depth about this match? That's all the depth there is to go into.
Happened.
It was not much of a match, but I guess it makes sense because they both wrestled earlier in the show. But, to me, it was fine, but it was the biggest disappointment on this show because on paper, you look at it and you see Brock Lesnar, Rob Van Damme in the finals of the King of the Ring tournament, and you're thinking, oh man, this is going to be blowaway. And instead, this was like a quick TV match.
Yeah, it was very disappointing. Triple H runs into Shawn Michaels in the back, has a group hug with Nash, and hugs X-Pac.
Why is Kevin Nash wearing a shirt that has the NWO font, but it just says 4 on it?
Yeah, for life, right? The NWO for life.
I guess, but
some other shirts.
Maybe it said life on the back, but
know.
it was.
I don't remember that shirt at all.
I don't. It was too clever for its own good. If I don't remember that's what that was definitely too clever for its own good. This was also in that very brief window of a couple of weeks that Shawn Michaels was a member of the NWO. He was not back wrestling in the NWO
too.
Yeah, Big Show back in the NWO. We had X-Pac. This was one of those things that seems like it didn't actually happen, but it did.
It's your main event, the WWE Undisputed Championship. The champion, The Undertaker, versus the challenger, Triple H.
And apparently we see in a video package that, so what happened was this rivalry, or this chapter of this rivalry started 2 months prior. Undertaker beat Hogan for the Undisputed Championship, says everyone will respect The Undertaker because that's what the whole Biker Taker gimmick was about, him not getting respect and demanding it. Undertaker cost Triple H the title at Backlash. We then have Triple H versus Hogan, where the winner gets a title shot, and Triple H beats Hogan. And this is where I realized maybe I shouldn't have been so surprised about Hogan putting over Kurt Angle, because he apparently was putting over everyone here after basically spending an entire career of not doing that and engineering politics to ruin guys' pushes. I don't know if he was trying to make up for it or this is just, what the deal was, but it's very jarring to see one match live where Hogan loses and then seeing a video package 2 other times where he loses.
Heyman joins JR and the King at ringside, and he says one of these men will lose their title to Brock Lesnar.
I also love how Heyman, he doesn't pull up a chair. He's literally just sitting on the edge of the desk talking to them.
We get Biker Taker here. So
yes.
Big Evil, the Red Devil, a lot of nicknames.
Thankfully, no booger red
no
this
booger
time
red.
from Jim Ross. Thank God.
Triple H comes out with his elbow heavily bandaged. He had a legit injury that would require surgery 2 days after this show.
Wow.
There's no lockup here to start this match. Just throwing punches. It's a fight early. Triple H thrown into the corner, comes out with a straight choke, taking the Undertaker down with it.
We should also point out that Triple H is the de facto babyface here.
Correct.
He is, which is just weird to see, particularly during this time period. And as the babyface, him doing this choke takedown out of the corner. And I'll just note, as this match gets going, for the vast majority of this match, really until Triple H goes for the pedigree, there is very little reaction to anything that he's doing, and the crowd, we have very light at best chance of Triple H. This is not a deal where it to me feels like everybody wants to cheer for Undertaker, but they can't because of how just dastardly of a heel Undertaker has been. But it's really not in their hearts to cheer for Triple H. So it kind of has a weird vibe for a lot of this.
There's not
as a main event.
The crowd is not into this for the majority of the match,
which is crazy when you think about how big of stars both these guys are, and that this is for the Undisputed Championship. But a lot of it, again, it's the slotting. It's a guy that everybody loves to cheer as a heel, and a guy that everybody loves to boo is the face. Not a great combination.
No, and there's not a lot happening here. A lot of punching each other.
No.
Like they're literally just punching each other in and out of the ring.
Yes, and punching each other where like it's not leading to anything. It's one guy punches him, the other guy punches him. Nobody's getting an advantage out of it. A lot of slamming off the steps going on here. Yeah. In a lot of ways, it's really, well, the early part of the match is almost like a paint by numbers WWE style main event from this time period without a lot of the excitement that would be painted in those numbers. And then the end, which we'll get to, the end is almost like a parody of what you would see in WWE pay-per-view main events with the interference and such.
So Paul Heyman's agitating JR on commentary, and it's the best part of this first half of this match.
It is. And not only is he agitating JR, he's agitating Lawler. And there's one point to where Lawler, with the least self-awareness of any human being on the planet, starts berating Paul Heyman for not respecting the match that's in the ring by what he's saying on commentary.
Pots, kettles, glass houses, throwing stones. There was a lot to laugh about there.
I cackled there, and then I spent too much time trying to figure out whether Lawler was saying this like poking fun at himself, or he just was in this moment legitimately annoyed and had zero self-awareness. I'm assuming the latter.
Heyman keeps asking these leading questions.
And Ross gets so mad.
JR gets so mad and goes, "Why don't you just answer your own questions?" It was awesome.
And you can just hear Paul reveling in frustrating JR. Like, it's all in good fun, but you can just tell it's again, particularly for somebody who spent so much time watching those two guys together in WCW.
There's so much chemistry and history there. Yeah.
Whether it be Jim Ross interviewing Paulie Dangerously, or when Paulie was Jim Ross's color and commentator in the NWA and in WCW, anytime they would interact in the WWE, it always made me very happy.
On the outside, Triple H gives Taker a suplex on the floor. But as soon as they get back in the ring, Taker's right back in being in control again.
Yeah, that was really weird. Like that was a spot that you would think, particularly at that time period in wrestling, that would have been like a turning point in the match. And instead, they got back in the ring and Undertaker just hit a clubbing blow and had control again.
So I think, one of the big reasons there was no reaction early is because the entire crowd is waiting for the arrival of The Rock.
Yes, who did not have a match on this show, as you'll notice by now. As we review this,
he made it clear in the earlier promo that he was here for this match, and so everyone was expecting a run-in, and so nobody cared until nothing was going to happen until The Rock showed up, and then Paul Heyman on commentary even mentions that he's, he starts talking about The Rock.
Well, he says that that Brock Lesnar took The Rock out backstage in the people's locker room, and he sent him to the people's ambulance, where he's going to go to the people's home or the people's hospital. And Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross are very dubious that this took place.
Triple H hits a big backdrop, and he actually had to muscle up Taker for that backdrop.
This was scary too.
It was like a shoot
Taker
backdrop.
It was, and like Taker went into his own orbit, but kind of like went off to the side. It was like there was too much mass in the air, going with too much force, and it just it didn't end up as bad as it could have been. But there was a moment where this looked like it could have been very problematic for the Undertaker.
Taker removes the top turnbuckle pad. Spinebuster by Triple H got a near fall. A high knee gets another near fall. Taker is able to counter the pedigree attempt into a slingshot. Triple H goes into the corner, squashing referee Earl Hebner. Then Taker runs in with a clothesline. He ends up clotheslining Hebner as well. So a double clothesline. Both men are down. Everybody's down, which the entire building goes to its feet. Everybody looks down the entranceway, waiting for The Rock. And then, of course, hit the music. Here he comes.
But the music thing, it's so dumb. We're in the middle of a match, and the music hits to signal the run-in from The Rock. Like, why can't he just run in? That just, I don't know. That annoyed the hell out of me.
Rock is out there. He immediately goes right for Heyman and chases Heyman away from ringside.
Heyman runs through the crowd, security guy in tow. But then it's weird because like the crowd is chanting Rocky, Rocky, and they're expecting him to do something. And instead he just gets on the headset and he's here for commentary.
Yeah, he's here to join the announce table here. And Taker and Triple H start brawling outside again. Then Taker, unprovoked, kicks Rock in the face while Rock has the headset on. He's looking down at the monitor. And he gets kicked right in the face.
Goes flying into the Spanish broadcast table, basically traverses the landscape between the English and Spanish broadcast table in the process of selling this kick.
Rock gets back up, punches Taker, grabs a steel chair, winds up to hit Taker with the chair, who moves. Rock nails Triple H in the head with the chair. Taker beats up Rock again. Triple H comes up bleeding after that chair shot. Back in the ring, we get a last ride powerbomb. New referee is in, and it's Nick Patrick. Comes in for a 2 count.
I always say, the guy who made out best of everybody from the end of WCW and the WWF, Nick Patrick here. And I was fully expecting some sort of heel Nick Patrick chicanery. I was so conditioned for that through the years. That's not what we got. We did, however, get one of my favorite things in professional wrestling. As Nick Patrick slides in the ring, we get a long 2 here. And then Taker punches Nick Patrick right in the face, and Patrick does his classic selling as though he just got shot from across the ring bump when he gets punched. There are few things in life, in my pro wrestling life, that bring me more joy than Nick Patrick selling getting punched.
Rock slides in, hits a rock bottom on the Undertaker after that. Rock leaves. Triple H, after what felt like an eternity,
it did. We have both men down, both refs down. You could have probably had the Brock Lesnar, Rob Van Damme match in between this time period of these ref bumps. And when Triple H slowly crawls over, he gets an arm over on the Taker. He has him pinned. It takes even longer for Earl Hebner.
He's alive.
He's alive. It takes him even longer to get there. And then it takes him even longer than that to count. He counts so slowly, and Undertaker kicks out. So we have like a different type of visual pin here where it's like a 2.999 count that's actually like a 8.99 count.
Triple H with a pedigree has another visual pin here, but Hebner is still hurt and he just can't make the count.
Because God forbid Triple H drop a fall here. He was not on the Hulk Hogan plan on this show or in this time period at all.
Triple H drags Hebner over, but Taker hits him with a low blow, rolls him up, holds the tights. Undertaker with the 3 count and the victory. Still your WWE champion.
What a lame finish. I did not expect that. The low blow, the little inside cradle roll up, not even inside cradle, just a little schoolboy roll up.
Yeah.
And he holds the tights, and it's a long 3 count. I will say that as someone, as we talked about on that WrestleMania 19 podcast, who was so mad about what happened with Triple H and Booker T, I did love the fact that Triple H had to sit here with his shoulders on the mat from an inside cradle and a low blow forever as Earl had recounted this very slowly. I did get a little bit of joy out of that.
So Taker starts taunting The Rock, who comes back to give The Undertaker the people's elbow. As he celebrates, Triple H gives Rock a pedigree. We get a choke slam by Undertaker, and it's
on Triple H.
On Triple H, and it's super funny because they keep playing the different theme songs after each guy does a move. So after the Rock Bottom, we get the Rock song. After the pedigree, we get Triple H's song, and then Taker, after his move, we get his song. It was completely ridiculous. It made me laugh.
It was like a jukebox. I felt like I was listening to 30-second samples on iTunes of the WWE the music CD or something. It was hilarious, unintentional comedy. This match, it was not good. It was like way overbooked stuff at the end, but the match itself did not work at all, and the crowd didn't care. So in a weird way, usually I hate all of this stuff, this superfluous interference and run-ins. But honestly, to me, it saved this from being even less noteworthy and less enjoyable than it already was.
Now, Taker walks out with the title as the show goes off the air. 23 minutes, 44 seconds. Ugh. It did not need to go that long. We could have used a lot more Rob Van Dam, Brock Lesnar. We could have
even give me 4 more minutes of Brock Lesnar and Rob Van Dam.
Yeah, this did not need to go this long. It was not very good. So, best match. Obviously, I think we're both on the same page here. It has to be Jericho RVD.
Yeah, without a doubt, Jericho and RVD. That was one of my favorite matches that we've watched, particularly from WWF or WWE shows. In the 20 plus episodes we've done of this podcast. Like I said, Chris Jericho was really the star of that match. Rob Van Dam looked great, but you could see Jericho leading him through it. The other thought that I had, Jeremy, was that as I'm watching this, and we talked about this a little bit before we started recording tonight, you watch this match, you think back to the match with The Undertaker, which we reviewed on this podcast. You had another match that I'm sure you'll bring up with Rob Van Dam. You didn't actually have it. That would be quite a story. But another match that you really liked, and you can make an argument that Rob Van Dam's WWE output is right up there with his ECW output. And I would say that this match with Chris Jericho is the best straight wrestling match that I may have ever seen Rob Van Dam in. Like, I'm talking not in ECW, even the matches with Jerry Lynn, you still had chairs, you still had table spots here and there. Like, this was just a straight pro wrestling match without any of the normal extreme trappings, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, I think back to, one of my favorites was during the Invasion, the Jeff Hardy Rob Van Dam match, but that was a hardcore match. The Undertaker RVD match you mentioned, also that was a hardcore championship match. So yeah,
the RVD Eddie Guerrero ladder match, which I think was on a Raw and was really crazy.
Yep, but a non-gimmicked straight wrestling match. Absolutely. This was Rob Van Dam in WWE was he was real good. He had a really good run. Which we forget about.
Very, very over. And like this match was just, there's some really cool, like the whole match was good, but there's some really cool crisp sequences of like 5, 6, 7 moves. Pretty intricate stuff that they hit everything really well, really crisp, really quick. And it was even more impressive because it's not as if these guys had worked a ton with each other up until this point. And they're, Rob Van Dam, very unique guy that not everyone can have a great match with. And Jericho, just another example of showing how great he was even all the way back in 2002.
Worst match for you? There's a couple to choose from here.
Oh God. Oh man. Again, part of it, it's the broadcast, because if I'm going by the broadcast, the thing I hated the most is having to listen to them just insult Molly Holly for no reason. That made me very, terrible. Very angry. I don't know. What was yours? I guess you give me yours. And
for me, it's the main event. I mean, the main event was nothing. The whole entire first half was nothing. They made it clear from the start that nothing would happen until The Rock showed up, and so you were guarantee you were just waiting for a ref bump and you were waiting for this stuff. It was just, it wasn't enjoyable. There was just not a lot happened, just a lot of punching. Without Paul Heyman out there, I couldn't imagine how much that would have dragged. So no, it was, for me, it was by far the main event.
I think you've convinced me that would be the case, because every other match on this show, I can pull some redeeming stuff out of. Like the Molly Trish match was actually pretty good. Just the announcing was terrible. Nothing else on the show was openly bad. Whereas the main event, it was all the reasons you mentioned. Plus, again, I can't drive home the point enough about the fact that you had the Undertaker, which the Undertaker, it's fine as a heel. He was very good as a heel, but you had him, who the crowd wants to cheer, against the guy Triple H, that outside of when he did the pedigree, nobody had any interest in cheering for him as this valiant babyface overcoming the odds. So that it started behind the 8 ball, then all the other things you mentioned about just the crowd just waiting for The Rock. And then basically, like you said, the first half completely nondescript. And then the second half was more like a really hot Raw angle rather than an actual pay-per-view main event match. So yeah, I can throw that match in the guillotine for sure.
It's funny to think about that this would be the final King of the Ring as a pay-per-view event, and the finals of the final King of the Ring went 5 minutes and 42 seconds.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, it's really fitting for how much they sort of cast off that tournament. And I think in a lot of ways, after the early days of, at least on pay-per-view, the King of the Ring in 93, maybe a few other times, how much of a missed opportunity that was. And a lot of it was because, like a lot of other things that WWE just didn't like that were pro wrestling staples, they were never a company, have never been a company that was really big on putting on tournaments and just putting on really good pro wrestling tournaments. So it makes sense that that concept died a death pretty swiftly.
Again, if you want to interact with the show, at WrestleAtRandom on Twitter, and wrestling@random.com has all of the links for our social media, for all the ways to subscribe to this podcast. Please tell your wrestling fan friends about the show. The word of mouth is what we're relying on here to get the word out. Even if your friends don't watch anymore but used to watch wrestling, this is a fun trip down memory lane they might enjoy. So tell your podcast listening friends about us. Show them how to subscribe. And all those links, again, are available. wrestling@random.com. And if you do use Apple Podcasts as your podcatcher of choice, please rate and review. Give us those 5-star ratings. That helps us get found by other wrestling fans that are trying to find a good podcast to listen to. So we rely on you to continue to spread the word. We appreciate all the support we get, and we love interacting with people on Twitter and social media. So please continue to do that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's been great and very heartening to see the continued positive feedback and interaction roll in, and love hearing people's thoughts on the shows, whether they had seen them before, seeing them for the first time. It's been really interesting to hear both from longtime fans who are revisiting things from their youth, and then from young fans who are finding out about guys like Ricky Steamboat for the first time, and telling us that those guys have become some of their favorite wrestlers based off of our reviews of these shows, and then going back and watching the events themselves.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for joining us, Adam.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeremy. This was a fun show to watch. I would say I would recommend, if based on nothing else, from the strength of RVD versus Jericho and some other fun stuff scattered throughout.
And I want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.